Hello guys, welcome. So, I recently finished Dragon Age the Veilguard, and there is a lot I want to talk about. Before I share my thoughts with you all though, there is a few things I want to say. 1. This is a spoiler-free video. I'm going to cover a few different topics and share my overall thoughts on each of them without going into specifics. The footage used in this video will be from the prologue, or very early parts of Act 1. I'll also have subtitles turned off in the cutscenes to give away as little context as possible. I will be making another video after this where I give you guys my full thoughts and talk about everything in much more detail. And 2, this is not meant to be a professional review or anything. It's just me talking about the game as a long-time Dragon Age fan. To give you an idea of where I'm coming from when I'm talking about this game, I love Dragon Age. I have loved these games for years. I am very invested in the story, the characters, and the lore, and I have been waiting for this game a very long time. I realize that that is going to affect how I think about this game in some way. However, with that said, that doesn't mean I think this game is perfect. I strongly believe we should be critical of the games that we love in a fair, constructive way. Nothing is ever going to be perfect, and nothing is ever going to be good to everyone. With so many different voices and opinions, that is simply impossible. But we want the games that we play and the media we consume to be the best version of itself as it can be. And in order to achieve that, constructive criticism is needed. There is a lot to love about this game, but I also have a fair bit of criticism. And I want you to know that every bit of criticism that I have is coming from a place of genuine love for the series, and with the best intentions. Anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, grab yourself a nice warm cup of tea and let's jump straight in. So to start off, I'll give you some extra context before sharing my thoughts. I tend to explore a lot and take my sweet time with the games I play. So, I completed all of the companion quests, completed a romance, did every single side quest I could find, read almost every single codex entry, and explored as much of every single area as I could. I did not manage to 100% this game yet, but I made sure to get as much out of the game in my first playthrough as I could. It took me about 107 hours to complete the game on Adventurer difficulty, which is basically this game's normal mode. My rook was a female elven mage from the Lords of Fortune, and my inquisitor was a Lavellan who romanced Solus, vowed to redeem him, and disbanded the Inquisition. So with that in mind, let's get into things. One of the first things I noticed was that the application name is still Morrison, which, if you don't know, was the game's internal project name. Don't really have anything to add, I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's cool. Thankfully, I did not experience a lot of bugs, and the few bugs that I did experience weren't game-breaking for me. The worst one was the audio crackling in certain areas, specifically areas with a lot of NPCs. For some reason, it also got better or worse depending on where I turned my camera. Another bug that I had that was a bit annoying was one where my current active ultimate would change back to the default one on the bar sometimes, so I'd have to go into the menu and change it back again. I also noticed that some of the facial and lip syncing animations looked a bit off. Some of the animations looked a bit stiff and awkward, and sometimes the animation would be a little bit out of sync with the dialogue. I felt like this got better as I progressed through the game, though I don't know if that's because it actually got better or I simply got used to it. And that's about it for me. I know there's a few people that experienced a bug where Rook's appearance would randomly change or revert back to the default on a reload, but I believe that's since been patched. I don't think there's any other issues that I ran into. The game felt really polished to me. I liked the music in this game. Some of the songs gave off a bit of a Mass Effect vibe rather than Dragon Age, but I liked the music overall. That said, the Inquisition music still wins for me. I don't know why or how to explain it, but Inquisition's music always hits in such a specific way emotionally, and a lot of Veilguard songs didn't do that for me. Maybe I just need a bit more time with the game, that's completely possible. And again, I liked Veilguard's music, but most of my favorite soundtracks so far are the ones that mixed in parts of Inquisition soundtracks, and I think that says a lot. The character creator in this game is great and such an improvement over Inquisition's character creator. The one wish I had for Veilguard's character creator was more and better hairstyles, and not only did we get that, we also got a ton more customization options when it comes to our rook's body and face. The The body and height sliders are among my favorite additions to the character creator, as I can now finally play a short, curvy elf. Fun fact, I am very short IRL, so seeing my short rook stand next to Emmerich and Tosh is both funny and very relatable. I only have a few small nitpicks with the character creator, and one of them is that I wish the freckles were a separate option with its own intensity slider rather than a complexion. That said, I love all the tattoo options, and I love that you're able to pick and choose what parts of the tattoo are visible. Being able to import our rook's appearance from a previous save and being able to edit them whenever is such a great feature. Thanks to a person called Mao on Blue Sky, we learned that it is also possible to import your Inquisitor's appearance. I'll leave a link to their post where they explain how to do it. It would be nice if they could patch in a simple import button though, and it would also be great if they could give us the ability to edit our Inquisitor later. Kinda related, I really like that we are able to wear and transmog any armor as well as any type of casual clothes. It would have been nice to have dyes, but despite that, I was eventually able to find an outfit for my rook that I liked. It would also be nice to have a golden nug-like system or even a new game plus so that we can import the outfits and armors we earned and collected from our previous playthroughs. Combat is something I've always been relatively neutral about in Dragon Age games. I've always liked the real-time with pause that the games have, but there have been moments throughout the previous games where combat felt like a chore. With Veilguard, I actually found myself enjoying the combat a lot more than I thought I would. I very much still prefer the more chill, tactical approach, and Veilguard's flashy, fast-paced combat is definitely something I had to get used to. But once I started to really get it, I was actually having fun. What did annoy me sometimes is that almost all the enemies always target Rook, so sometimes I struggled a bit to get a hit in because all I could do was dodge the incoming attacks. I enjoyed figuring out boss patterns. I know I've seen people talk about the bosses and enemies being repetitive, and I can see where they're coming from, but it personally didn't bother me as much. Then again, that's coming from someone that mainly plays these games for the story and the characters. Enjoying the combat is just a bonus for me. I'm in the minority probably, but oh well. I do miss the days of having a bar full of mage spells that I can just use whenever so long as I have the mana for it, but I also really appreciate them trying something new. Having only 2 party members at a time and not being able to control them directly, I still feel a little sad about, but having played the game now, it really wasn't that much of an issue. Overall, I think the combat in Veilguard feels very engaging, and even as someone that doesn't care about the combat all that much, I actually enjoyed it a lot. If you've been following the channel for a while, you might remember that one of my biggest wishes for Veilguard was going back to a more linear style approach for the game's levels. I even made a whole video talking about this like 2 years ago. And I'm really happy they decided to take this approach for Veilguard and step away from open world. I enjoyed exploring every area fully, and every quest felt like it had its own little story to tell. The way we keep returning to previously discovered areas gave me Dragon Age 2 vibes, but unlike Dragon Age 2, the Veilguard does a great job of making it feel like I'm actually revisiting a place rather than playing on a reused map. Each area also had its own distinct atmosphere, and each looked absolutely stunning. I didn't use photo mode a lot during my first playthrough as I just wanted to focus on playing the game, but on my next playthrough I'll definitely take some extra time to get some more pretty screenshots. Treviso and the Necropolis were my 2 favorite areas to explore by far. There's a few other areas I want to talk about as well, but those are very much spoiler territory, so I'll have to save those for my next video. The puzzles I thought were fine. I liked that they made use of the environment a lot, and I enjoyed figuring them out. The frequency of banter is also something Veilguard improved a lot on. I'm like 90% sure banter is triggered by location like in Dragon Age Origins, at least I noticed this on certain maps. With us revisiting places a lot, I noticed banter always triggered in certain areas. And even as I was exploring, I never felt like there was too much silence or that I was going through all the banter too quickly. The characters continuing their banter after being interrupted was also a great quality of life change. Alright, choices. I have a few things to say on this topic, but most of it I will have to save for my full spoiler video. I will say that now that I've played the game, a few more Inquisition choices would have really added more flavor to the world and conversations. Sure, a Codex entry isn't as impactful as, say, the Hawk versus Alistair Logain Strout choice, but I still really enjoy the little references and mentions here and there. It doesn't have to be something big. A single voice line or a small codex entry that makes a vague reference to a certain character that nerds like me will immediately recognize is enough for me. It doesn't always have to be super obvious, I just really enjoy the subtlety of that. As for all the choices we get to make in Veilguard, I liked what we got. Some were more impactful than others, of course. There's a few, hey, I did this thing and the game remembered, nice. But then there's also a few, haha, yes, this is going to ruin me emotionally, I'm in danger, help, why are you doing this to me, game, type choices. Which I both hate and love because pain, but also pain. Most of the very important choices happen later in the story, but the game still did a great job of keeping me excited and a little bit nervous for what was to come next. Again, I'll be going into this in much more detail in my next video. The dialogue in Veilguard was too much tell and not enough show, is the best way I can put it, really. Oftentimes I felt like characters were over-explaining things and telling me things that the game had literally shown me a few moments prior. Conversations between characters felt very unnatural at times as a result of that, and made me feel like the characters were talking to me, the player, rather than to each other, or my rook for that matter. The way characters phrased things or certain words they used felt very out of place sometimes. Like, I was listening to two of my friends having a conversation over Discord rather than two characters in the world of Thedas, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not saying this was always the case. There were still plenty of scenes and dialogue that were very immersive and made me genuinely emotional. Again, I'll dive into specific examples in my next video, but I hope this makes sense for now. The options on the dialogue wheel are still a little too easy to misinterpret, and while there were different tone options, a lot of the actual spoken dialogue still felt really similar in tone, like they all still very much leaned towards being more positive and optimistic, at least for a large part of the game. I feel like this might not matter very much if you're playing an already optimistic rook, but as someone who went into the game with the idea of having a bit of a cynical rook, yeah, this was something I had to get used to. With that said though, I ended up getting really attached to my rook in the end, and I didn't mind having to change their personality a bit in order to make it work in the game. Even if it took me a little bit to switch off that mindset. One last nitpick related to the dialogue is that the pronunciations for certain words was just off. Gillenan is the big one here, of course, but another one that bothered me was the way they pronounced Kamek. It's always been pronounced Kamek, but in Veilguard the characters keep saying comic, and it just really annoyed me. Alright, characters, companions, and romances. This is probably the subject I want to talk about most because this is where most of my criticism comes from. I did really like most of the characters, and especially the companions, I think all really feel like their own person with well-defined personalities and interesting backstories. They're all great to interact with and compelling enough to want to learn more about. However, I feel like each of their arcs simply lacked the depth that I'm used to seeing in a Dragon Age game. I can't really be more specific since I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but if you've played the game, you'll probably know what I mean. The concepts of the companions are all very solid, and each of them has a very strong introduction and setup. The problems that they have are, for the most part, very real and relatable things. And even if the issue that they have is more of a mystery or magic related thing, it's still an interesting struggle to have for a character. The issue for me is that a lot of these struggles and character arcs weren't explored deeply enough. I thought that a lot of the companions' problems were resolved too soon, and it really felt like there was something missing. I think if we had just a few more scenes for each of them, and maybe one or two extra steps in their personal quests, that their arcs would have felt a lot more complete and earned. I feel very similar about the romances. I did really like the romance that I did. It was really sweet, and the way it developed was very fitting for the character. I don't even mind that the companions flirt with each other a lot before the lock-in point, or that they seem like they're pursuing the other companion more actively than they do Rook. For me, the issue is that a lot of the romances don't feel, I guess, developed is the word that I would use, as compared to what we are used to from a Dragon Age game. The best way I can put it is I think the romances in Veilguard are all missing that extra bit of uniqueness that they did have in the previous games. And I'm not saying that I think the romances aren't unique fundamentally. Of course, each romance still has its own flavor, for lack of a better term, because every companion is different. It's just that I think the way each of the romances develop and conclude in Veilguard feel very similar to each other. Most of the romances in the previous games all had their own special mini arc specific to that romance. An extra struggle for these characters to overcome together as they develop and grow in their relationship. Again, this is something I will talk about in much more detail in my next video, but I think Fenris is a really good example for this. When romancing Fenris in Dragon Age 2, there is a point in the romance where Fenris breaks things off with Hawk because, despite his strong feelings for them, his trauma is making it really difficult for him to be close and intimate with someone in this way. This part of Fenris' character adds an extra layer to his and Hawk's relationship, and it's something that you only see when you're in a romance with him. I have not romanced every single companion in every Dragon Age game, but as far as I know, most of the romances have an extra layer like this, even if they're not as impactful as Fenris's. I think Morrigan, Alistair, Anders, Josephine, Blackwall, and of course Solus are all very good examples of this, and if you've romanced any of these characters, you'll probably know exactly what I mean. Veilguard did such a great job at setting up this kind of romance-specific struggle for a lot of these characters, but then these things just don't really get addressed. Yes, I have only played through the game once, so I've only fully experienced one romance, but I have watched some of the other romance scenes and talked to other people who romance other characters, and a lot of their experiences were similar. Just like the companion arcs, the romances are good, it's just that extra layer of depth that I missed. Other ways through which the characters could have gotten a little bit more depth is the gift-giving system and some extra conflict. The gift-giving system in its current form doesn't really add much other than an extra way to increase your bond. It would have been really nice to have a little cutscene in which the characters talk about the item and why it means something to them. As for conflict, the bits that we have are fine, but they all get resolved really easily and also earlier in the game than I expected. I know some of the development of these arguments relies on banter, but I think it would have been nice to have these characters take a bit more time to set aside their differences. I know I've been very critical of things in this video, so I want to end on a positive note. I loved the main story in Veilguard, and especially the last act I think is really, really strong. I like the Varric narration bits. I think the art is really pretty, and I will definitely be going over all those to take screenshots so I can use those for thumbnails and add them to my desktop wallpapers. The antagonists are very competent and genuinely feel intimidating. The stakes are high, and no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you plan, sometimes things just go wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it, except get up and try again. And the story reminds you of this constantly. The main story quests were a lot of fun to play through, and a lot of its themes really resonated with me. The past few weeks, I've been thinking about this game a lot. I've been processing everything, and I've been working on putting all of my thoughts and feelings in these videos. And honestly, once that's all done, I'm just really excited to dive back in and enjoy the story all over again. At the end of the day, to me, this is still a Dragon Age game. And even though I felt it lacked in certain areas, I still had such a great time. And I'm sure in time, I'll warm up to it a little bit more. Again, all these criticisms are coming from a place of love and with the best intentions, and I don't think I would be this critical of it if I didn't like it as much as I do. Of course, I hope some of the things that bothered me will be fixed in the future somehow, but even if they don't, I still think the developers did a great job and made the best they could with the tools that they had. And I doubt any of them will ever see this, but I still want to say thank you. Thank you for giving us another amazing story in this world. Playing through a Dragon Age game always feels like coming home. It feels comfortable. And it was great to be back in Thedas again. I appreciate all the hard work that went into this game, and honestly, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with next. So these are my general thoughts on Dragon Age the Veilguard. If you want to hear me talk about the game in more detail, keep an eye on my channel, as my next video will be a complete, full spoiler deep dive on all of my thoughts on Veilguard, with specific examples to help me get my points across. I'm still working on it. It's kind of a lot. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, let me know by liking this video, or leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on Dragon Age the Veilguard. Did you have a similar experience? Are there things you disagree with? Special thanks to my patrons. Your support truly means a lot to me. If you also want to support the channel, check out my Patreon. If you want to have a chat sometime, feel free to join my Discord server. And hey, I also have a Blue Sky now, so make sure to follow me there as well. That's it for now though. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.